welcome to this episode of The Big Picture. Big Picture, Big Conversations. This is where depth meets humor. But for today, I'll be your only host. My name is Tom Mukhwana, host of The Big Picture. For this conversation, Justine decided to let one more guest stay on set. So it's going to be me against three very bright individuals. First, we have Ian Mutiso. Ian Mutiso is an advocate of the High Court. Then secondly, we have Diana Chieng. Diana Chieng is the money lawyer. Sindio Diana. Interesting name. You'll explain where that came from. She's also a managing partner at Chieng and Githunguri Advocates. She's also an advocate of the High Court. And then there's Nelly Njenga. Nelly Njenga is an advocate of the High Court. So as you can see, this is a proper bench, except for me. But I will be facilitating this conversation and hopefully you come out of it with something. We're having this conversation because as you're watching this probably in the next 2 hours, you'll hear about a debate that happened for the Law Society of Kenya president. So 3 candidates are running for the Law Society of Kenya president seat. All of them want these 3 people's votes and other over 23,000 advocates in the country. These 3 are going to be voters. Sindio, simtapiga kura?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And it's going to be their votes, people like them who are going to decide who's going to lead the society for the next 2 years. But the first question that I'll start with, ladies and gentlemen, is why is this election important? For some Kenyans, they don't even know what's happening. Why should we care about the LSK president? Ian, that question goes to you.
Well, for me, it's quite simple. The society is tend to be a fighter for people's rights. And I think it has come to a point whereby in the current situation of the country, we need a very strong LSK. And that's why you find there is a lot of public interest on who is actually going to take that seat again this year.
Yeah, what does a strong LSK mean though?
For me, I think it's nothing lower than what Faith is leaving behind. The society has come out to be very proactive, come out to be very accessible for other Kenyans. And also it has also advocated for so many young advocates who are always wanting to be part of something. So I believe a strong LSK is one that does what LSK has been doing for the past 2 years, and perhaps carrying the torch what has been left by so many other presidents before. And I believe just holding this government accountable, holding the judiciary accountable, holding parliament accountable, and any other institution that exists in this country. So I believe that's what LSK needs to be, embodiment of holding different institutions accountable and also holding advocates accountable.
Yeah. Before I come to you, Nelly, Dana, before last year, 2024 and 2025, many people had not, this was only a matter or affair that affected only 23,000 or 20,000 individuals. But then over the last 2 years, it's been a thing that has rescued Kenyans from a lot of things. But what exactly is the role of LSK in the Kenyan democracy?
So, of course, adding to what he said, which is LSK goes about ensuring that the government is held accountable for what they're doing. The LSK's role is actually to assist the government and the courts in interpretation of legislation and matters to do with administration of justice. So if you have a weak LSK, then they simply abdicate their responsibility and allow the government to do whatever they wish. At the same time, the LSK is also supposed to protect members of the public with regard to enforcement of the law and matters to do with justice, as well as protecting advocates themselves within the profession.
Yeah.
They set standards for the practice of law and administration of justice in the country. So that's the importance of these things. That's why it matters to the members of the public to understand the function of the LSK and the people who are responsible for it.
Yeah, at the helm of LSK.
Yeah.
Nelly, the past 2 years have been huge for Kenya. And a lot of times you saw the individual that Ian has mentioned, Faith Odhiambo, coming out of the woodwork, out of nowhere in the middle of the night to represent someone or show up in court and put pressure on the government to release people. Why is it that it wasn't a seat that many Kenyans paid attention to before 2024? Why was it that it's only in 2024 that people started feeling LSK?
I think before 2024, the presidents who have been there before, you can we've actually had about 50 presidents since the inception of the Law Society of Kenya, and most of them only appear in court. So you'll find they do constitutional petitions. When we're having the presidential petition after the general elections, LSK is usually a party to that. So they were not coming out and actually going and having boots on the ground and going to the police stations and going to, actually, when during the 25th protests, we could see they were actually getting tear gassed on the streets together with the protesters. So this is, I think it's a wonderful way forward for all the presidents coming forth, because now there's a larger population, especially in Nairobi, who are looking to see who is coming in as the LSK president. Before, they were kind of getting away with just going to court. Now a lot more is being expected from them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ian, before we went on, you kept mentioning PIL, public interest litigation.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be something that you cared a lot about.
Yeah.
Was it something, we've had 51 presidents, including Faith.
Yeah.
Why were the other 50 not in, because you can't tell me that 2017 Kenya didn't have protests and people were illegally arrested.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that didn't happen before. Yeah. Was it down to the leadership? Like, did it take an individual initiative from the president of the time, or what makes Faith so different?
I think it's about the right timing on the implementation of the 2010 Constitution. So if you take a look at, especially from the time of Eric Theory, that is the time when we started seeing the people testing the limits of the Constitution. And for some weird reason, this government, when it took power, those limits are now being stretched out. And it got to a point whereby, I believe, with the high number of young advocates who are very so proactive in public interest matters, the welfare, about taxation and all these type of things, all of these opinions of young advocates are always getting to reach to the president. And it got to a point whereby it's no longer, you can't ignore how big this is of an issue. So I think it was just a bubble that burst during Faith's tenure. But I also like how she managed that particular pressure, because it wasn't something easy, you can imagine. So I think that's how the evolution has grown, especially since 2018, as I look back at it. Yeah.
And what about pro bono services? Because that's something that LSK provided a lot during the protests.
Yeah.
Did it come from the top?
So for me, noting that I was also involved in protests, at some point, you just look at how people are treated in a police station, especially when somebody's just been arrested. They have no idea the legal process and everything like that. So when we started having this rise of cases, you just felt like there was a call to action to just do something. Each one of us has taken an oath that requires us to be not only defenders of the Constitution, but it's just something that is within advocates that just have to show up when it actually really matters. Yeah. And I think what has happened is that Faith has been able to tap into those resources quite well. And quite sure, as much as this is work which is not paid, at least even the LSK has been able to step into ensuring that, okay, you need an advocate, we'll try and ensure that even the fare for this advocate gets to him so that he or she goes to represent you. Yeah. So I like how that has been tapped in the current leadership. Yeah.
And Jones, for something.
Yes, although to be clear, the LSK has been providing pro bono legal services for quite a while. This is not something we started recently. It's just maybe there's more visibility now, because as advocates, you're encouraged. It's not mandated, but you're encouraged to provide at least, I think it's 50 hours a year of pro bono services. So they've been doing this before. They even have a pro bono week.
Really?
It's just that, yes, it's just that there's more visibility now.
Yeah. Was the same provided during protests in the past? I'm imagining extrajudicial killings, all these things have been a thing, not of the past, but it's something that happens and has happened for many, many years.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily targeted specifically to protests. Yeah. It's just something that was available if you need it.
Or if you needed it.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm noticing here there's a trend in the functions of LSK. There's a commitment to lawyers, there's a commitment to the government, and then there's also a commitment to the people, the public. That's one of those functions. All of them, you can see, like, for instance, facilitate acquisition of legal knowledge. So this is the legal profession and lawyers. We'll get to the lawyers, which is you guys, and what matters to you. But what does LSK do for the government? I think I'll ask that to Nelly.
Yes, I would say among the functions of the LSK, we have these bills that are usually legislated. So what happens is the LSK, once they get these bills from National Assembly, they disperse them to the members of the society, and we're able to make comments on those bills. And if there's anything that needs to be rectified or any policy reform that needs to happen before the bill is passed as law, then the LSK, including the members, including advocates, are able to give their comments on such bills before we're able to enact them as law. So that's one of the ways that LSK comes in to assist the government. That's on the National Assembly side. Also for the executive, in the implementation of these laws, the LSK also gives advisory on implementation of the laws. So you'll find they are giving advisory opinions on how to implement the laws, especially with regard to the new constitution. And also when we go to courts, if you find a law that is not constitutional, then they go to court to talk about now the unconstitutionality of those laws.
Right.
Yeah, so in that way.
And so this is basically advisory. It does an advisory role to government.
Yeah.
That's what you mean, Nelly? Am I getting that right? To an extent?
To an extent, but not okay, because obviously the government is three parts. So we have the National Assembly, the executive, and the judiciary. So it plays an advisory role. Perhaps my colleagues can give their opinions, but in my opinion, yes.
Ian?
There are also opportunities where LSK is given to nominate an advocate in the High Court to serve in specific committees. For example, last year we saw the president had tried to put a compensation committee, let alone there was actually an existing arm of the government whereby there is a sitting representative from the Solicitor General's office, the Attorney General from Law Society of Kenya, and these are bodies which are actually mandated to review cases on a case-by-case basis. So LSK gets opportunities to appoint advocates to go and sit on some of these boards. And most notably, we usually get emails to present ourselves to be nominated in these particular opportunities when they arise.
So the compensation board, is that one such?
Well, there is a board that's actually existing to that, but the board which was being set up by the president was way out of bounds. It was done in a way that was not making sense.
Yes.
But I'm just giving an example that there was already a legislative body that is not legislative, but a legal body that is mandated to look into such matters.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. You want to add something, Dana?
Yeah, so it's not just advisory, as she was trying to explain. It's not just advisory, it's also in other aspects. For example, accountability, as we said earlier, which is if the government steps outside of the bounds of what the law is, they facilitate accountability by going to courts to say, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other. But also just when we do practice in general, laws will come up that need refinement, need to be thrown out because they're unconstitutional and so forth. Yeah, so that's another way in which we do. So that's not advisory either. It's more accountability, enforcement of the constitution, and so forth.
Yeah, like ensuring that the rule of law is maintained.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so one of the hot issues right now is just a few days ago, we had a protest outside LSK offices, and that was because of sexual harassment claims by advocates.
Yeah.
The allegation is that there's a lot of sexual harassment that happens in law firms, and there was a feeling that LSK wasn't doing enough. And I've just read a statement from Faith where she says that there's counseling services that will be offered, and there's also a board that will investigate some of those claims. Is this an issue that you think will decide this election? Because I'm not hearing any of these candidates particularly speaking about it. If I call Ian to that.
Well, if I may, I think it's going to be a very serious issue that needs to be addressed. I personally suggested that in every single year, let at least one CPD be on matters regarding sexual harassment or something in that nature. The reason why I did that particular suggestion is because I realized when this particular issue was being discussed, when one of my good friends, Eric Muruki, set up a space, and you're getting to hear stories of people who have been in such a space, I got to realize that we don't know much about what happens in this profession. And I think that I hope whoever gets to be in that position will take this as part of the top 3 agendas that needs to be addressed and needs to be done ASAP. Yeah.
Dana, do you feel like this is something that is being addressed even now before the elections have happened? Because it feels like it should be something that these people campaign on.
I do not feel that any of the candidates has come out strongly about this issue, but I'm in two minds about it because on the one hand, there's a sense of an ignorance about what LSK actually does with regard to sexual harassment. For example, they do have an anti-sexual harassment policy. They provide counseling services, as you mentioned. They provide sensitization classes and so forth on the issues of sexual harassment. So I think the question that we need answered right now is, what can they do that is further than what they are doing? Because a lot of the demands are things they're already doing. So what can they actually do? And would those things fall under their mandate, or should they be standing beside people who are having this problem, who go towards maybe the courts or the police for enforcement? You know,
For instance, I had a lawyer, an advocate, forgive me, an advocate who said that they should be debarred. These perpetrators of this abuse should be debarred. Is that not something that LSK can do?
On what basis? On what legal basis? There has to be something that you're basing this decision on. You know, when we make decisions as whether as judges or as lawyers, it's based on something concrete. Yeah.
Well, to some of these people, they might say that the allegations are concrete allegations. I mean, Nelly, what's your thoughts?
I think with the sexual harassment and the anti-bullying policy by the LSK, part of the once you make a complaint, there's a process. It goes to the commission, and the commission then refers it to the tribunal, and the tribunal does have the mandate or the power to actually strike you off the role of advocates. So depending on the severity of the complaint, then such a decision can actually lead to your disbarment. But I think it has to be taken on a case-by-case basis. We can't give it as a blanket punishment for all people who are offenders of the sexual harassment or anti-bullying policy. I think the major concern with the sexual harassment and anti-bullying complaints is that there's very little evidence. So you find that with lack of evidence, there's only so far a complaint can go. So that's where most people have been complaining and saying that they've written to LSK, they've written to the commission, and no response has been made. But also on the side of LSK, they say that most of these complaints come without proof of said harassment. So you find those cases they end at the point of the person making the complaint. And on the other hand, once they learn that a complaint has been made against them, then there's this issue of they now cannot find work amongst their peers.
Being blackballed.
Yes, being blackballed, which is now the greatest problem, which has now led to the place where we are now, because most people are afraid to come out, because once you make the reports, they'll be notified, and if they know that it was you who made that a complaint, then you don't have anywhere to work after.
Yeah. That seems like a big ethical issue within the society, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. And in my opinion, I believe that we're in such a space whereby now we are deliberating on how to collect evidence in such a matter. You get it? You do know how insane that is? And I feel that in such situations, it also takes a lot of strength for somebody to come up and say, hey, listen, such and such happened to me. And then you start recognizing patterns of people coming to say the same thing over and over again. So in my opinion, I do believe that as much as sexual offenses, there's a bit of some difficulty in collecting such evidence, I feel like some of these things, you just have to find a way on how they can be looked at. Because where there's smoke, there's always something. I do believe that.
Yeah,
Because
that is true.
look at the type of cases that the courts deal with. It's so hard. And I think we should just be able to do something about it. Yeah.
It should feel like the female members of the society feel protected by the society. And to be fair, Faith Odhiambo says that the Advocates Complaints Commission or the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal is investigating it's received some of these complaints. So it feels like a big issue, and it could be something, and she states clearly that it's something that affects interns, which then brings in a power play issue where it's the senior members doing this to the younger members. It feels like something that should be taken into consideration by all these people who are campaigning, which brings me to these candidates. So there's 3 guys here. Peter Wanyama is a managing partner at Manyonge Wanyama Associates. Moura Kabata is the current vice president of LSK. And then there's senior counsel Charles Kanjama. Has any of these folks appealed to any of you? I don't know, Diana, you have a huge smile on your face. Feels like you have something to say.
I just think it's very interesting. I'm sure my colleagues would probably have similar things to say. I just think it's very interesting to note how they're all making the same promises using different words. They want a strong bar. They want to uphold the rule of law. They want to, protect lawyers, or rather enhance practice and practice opportunities and so forth. I would like somebody to tell me something new, something different, something that says to me, hey, we're actually moving forward. This is the year 2026, and I don't, so far, it is my opinion that has not happened at the moment.
Well, Moura Kabata, in all fairness, says that this is a continuity of Faith Odhiambo, whom you've praised profusely, Ian. And Peter says that he'll leverage AI, and part of he has a 7-pillar, which is for renewed and a resilient profession. He also says that he'll protect the practice and the space. Rule of law will be upheld. He's going to support young and middle-level advocates. And this is something that all of them are saying. What makes it so hard to believe any of them, Nelly?
I think at this point where it's more about their personalities more than even their manifestos, because usually that is what the charisma and what I think is what is going to push the one above the other. Because yes, when you look at the manifesto, you're actually really considering what they're saying. They're all saying the same thing. I'm going to agree with my colleague. I tried to read through all their manifestos. They've come round to the offices, leaving their pamphlets, and yeah, they all say the same thing. They're all promising pupils that they will get a stipend. They're all promising that they'll increase the working, the environment for lawyers. I think Wanyama talks about, I've had him speak more about conveyancing and making sure that all transactions go back to lawyers. But there's nothing that's so new that you would say one candidate, you'd prefer one over the other. Yeah.
Ian, what do the young lawyers want? And I'd categorize all of you as young lawyers, if you don't mind.
First of all, I'd like to say,
young advocates.
I have received a sway call from Kabata just to speak to me to what's important to me and, find out about my opinion. And fortunately, I've not received a call from the rest.
Did he convince you?
I believe that he doesn't need to convince me, mainly because I've seen him work on the ground. And I have a very strong belief that he might be the right person to continue with what Faith has left behind. But let alone that, I believe each candidate has something to offer. My question is, does any of the other two, are they the right people to take the mantle, especially right now? As far as what young advocates want, I believe that from where Faith is leaving young advocates as of now, we have access to LSK, we have access to briefs in terms of pro bono matters. We have access to very good ERP system. We have access to a very good case tracking system. So some of these few things that I'm seeing applicable right now, I feel like it's so much easier for young advocates to do so much as opposed to what these other new promises are being offered to us. We don't know how it will actually look like.
Yeah.
And for me, sorry to say this, but I feel like Kabata is such a safe bet, mainly because I see that continuity. And perhaps once you build something for a very long time and it's actually good, it's very hard to tear it down in the future. So that's just my opinion.
That's your opinion,
Yeah.
which is allowed. It's valid.
Yeah.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
What about Charles Kanjama and Peter? What do you feel about them as candidates?
There's if you've observed LSK and maybe just advocates in general over the last few years, you've probably heard of Kanjama because he does quite a few things. He's all over the place doing this and that and the other. And personally, my concern would be Kanjama has several different positions that he holds for different organizations. For example, Kanjama is in the directorate for the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Yeah, he's part of the directorate. I believe he was even running for maybe the key treasurer or something like that, but he didn't. I don't think he got that one. So if he's doing all these other things, my concern would be what level of attention would he give to the LSK presidency? That would be my concern about Kanjama. As for Wanyama specifically, I'm just not.
You're not convinced.
I'm not there. Not there yet. I haven't seen it. It doesn't seem like anything that's necessarily different from somebody who wants to run for presidency just to be president. But of course, that is my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 days to the elections, you should be decided that, don't you think?
True.
Yeah, but maybe the debate that is happening today will sway some of the voters.
Yeah.
How much ideology? I'm not talking about only legal ideology. I'm talking about the ideologies outside the legal profession, how they view the world. How much does that influence a vote? I'll ask you.
Like, for example, with the administration currently, you'll find that the way Faith carries herself is what led her to being president. Most people spoke about her as a lecturer, and actually that is what allowed for her to get the vote as president. Most people are very impressed with the way she was as a lecturer and the way she was as a person. So even with the groundbreaking that was there previously, I think should be last month or yeah, that also is not too much about the law. It's actually just an ideology about what we could do with that property that belongs to the Law Society of Kenya. So if you find someone who's not visionary, then you will find that it remains in a state of almost like inertia kind of, and there's no much progress. I think they've also changed I think our website was changed recently. That is, I heard Kabata actually is the one who was spearheading that change in the website and everything. So if we find someone who's a bit regressive in their ideology, then we find even the progress being made in the Law Society of Kenya will be slower than it has been in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much does ideology, how much of a factor is ideology? Let me explain what I mean. I mean, someone's worldview, for instance, a conservative thinking person, a liberal thinking person, a very progressive person, which is how some people would describe Faith at the moment, a very progressive leader. But one of the criticisms that Kanjama has received was that he's very conservative in his thinking and his view of the world. How much does this change how a young advocate will go to vote?
I believe that when you look at Kanjama, he's one of those candidates that he's there to please the senior bar, and the ideologies also hold is so to the extreme that I really don't think he have a middle ground, because you find that the Law Society of Kenya is very diverse. It has people who profess different faiths and all these things. And when you look at what Faith has been able to show, she's been able to show that she is a legal representative, not just for the LSK, but for the people. If you ask me, I don't see Kanjama being the legal representative for the people. And I say this because when I look at PMO and Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama, I find that for them, they're more of elite practitioners. I would want to be in that caliber in, let's say, 10 or 15 years. I want to be handling the briefs that they do hold. And in such a sensitive role as we want right now, I think we need somebody who's not only progressive, as you said, but somebody who can gel in with the people. Because we have learned that Law Society of Kenya is beloved by so many people. So that's just my opinion. And I hope that it doesn't demerit Kanjama per se, because I don't know him personally. But from what I've learned about him, in his cases he holds, is that it can be a detriment to some point.
Because he says his rebuttal is that he holds brief for his clients. So these opinions that he expresses at the behest of his clients. And also, he claims that his proponents also say that he's a man, he has his views, but his views does not affect how he applies it to the rule of law and how he sees the world. Do you think that's a justified pushback?
That's not a realistic worldview, saying that your opinions would color the way you lead. For example, on this sexual harassment issue we were just talking about, if somebody has views that are very conservative, very aggressive, I mean, to what extent would they really support somebody who comes forward and says, I have been harassed? I mean, it's possible that their definition of harassment will not be the same as the definition of somebody who has very conservative views. There could even be some, let's say, victim blaming, for example, because that's the nature of conservative views. So, of course, definitely, the ideology matters towards what they can do for the LSK, and it matters towards the votes. Yeah, especially since we've already said the manifestos are similar. So our decisions do have to be made on the basis of personalities, on the basis of ideologies, on the basis of things that they think about the world and how they have presented themselves.
The worldview. And I understand what you're saying. And how free is the LSK to co-option by the state? And I say this specifically because at some point, Faith Odhiambo was accused of being co-opted by the state because of acceptance to be in that compensation board. But I'm speaking about before the election right now. How clear is LSK from state interference in these elections? Because it's a conversation we had off air about the financing, and that's not something that they're open about. But you have to spend money to run for office in Kenya. How free is LSK or these candidates from the executive?
With the candidates themselves, I've had Wanyama speak, I think, on a debate he did the other day on KTN, talking about how he's the only one who doesn't have political clients and things like that. And I think he was trying to kind of come out and say that he's the only one without like a political backing. Also, during the LSK groundbreaking, when the government, actually the president pledged to give some money, there was some pushback from the members of the society who were saying, are you going to accept this money? And then also kind of like you wouldn't be able to speak against the government that is funding the building that you're building, which was also, I think, against Kabata. And also we've seen with Kanjama, he was like with our current president against the constitution that when it was coming into being, he was against the constitution.
That's Charles,
Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama. So you find some of them have some political bias slightly, but none of them has. I think during Faith's campaign, she was backed properly by the late Raila, if I'm not wrong. There was a part.
That's something we'll have to verify afterwards. Yeah,
you can verify. There was some kind of political backing there. But now it's very important for them to come out clearly as strong and independent of the especially to the young bar. They need to come out as strong and independent of the current regime.
Now let's get into LSK, the council, and in general the judiciary? Because LSK it's connected to the judiciary, and I'll need one of you to explain exactly how that connection happens. But the judiciary has a corruption problem, and it's something that has been mentioned by advocates who are practicing. How can LSK contain this corruption? Because some of this corruption goes through the advocates, and then it's passed on to the judge. How can LSK handle that? Because this is something that I've also had all three candidates speak about.
Allow me to speak this, because this is also very personal to me.
Yeah.
I feel that the JSC per se will not take complaints from me as an advocate seriously as compared to a complaint from Harvey. And I'll give you a very good example. Harvey recently raised a concern about a specific judge on Twitter. And mind you, on the same date, he got a response from the JSC. I myself have lodged a complaint, and several other advocates have also lodged a complaint. And I feel that with any incoming president who wants to a progressive bar, I think they really need to recognize that also young advocates are serious as the senior advocates. And I think that's something that we will need a lot of support from LSK on, because each one of us has a mandate to uphold the rule of law. And more so, we cross the paths of the judiciary so much. And I do believe that majority of the people who practice in matters family court, criminal law, and some of the small claims, these are young advocates. And we have a lot of information based on judicial conduct. So I think the LSK moving forward really needs to take seriously the impact the young advocates really have as so far as fighting corruption in the judiciary.
Yeah, and how do you win the vote of the young people, the young advocates in such a case? Like, what do you do as LSK president?
Well, it's a hard question, because I think that that's a position or an opinion which I'll need to give when I'm in such a position. But just from where I'm sitting, I think if I was to, let's say, file a complaint against a judicial officer on a certain conduct, on how he handled a certain particular brief, and I raise it with the LSK because I'm not getting a response from the JSC, I do believe it will be out of courtesy for the LSK to say there was a complaint raised by this advocate on such and such a judge on such and such a matter. Could you address it by end of business or by end of week? That alone, it would do so much in terms of just getting the respect out of the JSC, and also out of we just have a two-way type of respect, because we go to court, we stand up to the judicial officers, we bow. Well, we also need the respect that our letters can actually be addressed as well. Yeah.
A good point you're raising, because just to go back to what you said, Nelly, it is true that Raila Odinga endorsed Faith Odhiambo. It was in February 28th of 2024, but there was no financial backing. But it is true that there was political endorsement for her to get to where she is. I don't know if that was successful or it played a role in that, but it definitely happened. Which goes back to the point that you raised, that the politics is also there. And the politics of then within this judiciary, JC and LSK, that some members are considered more, should I say, is it correct to characterize it as important than others?
I do believe that's the right term.
Yeah,
because we need to be held on the same weight.
on the same level.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. But all these members that have hit the road running, these three candidates that are standing for office, has any of them expressed, a clear vision? Like, I want to do this, or I saw a comment under one of these debates, someone saying that they're all saying the same thing, and which is exactly what you've said. But the young advocates are smarter than that, I believe. They know exactly what they want. Well, Mwaura promises continuity. Is there a section of young advocates who believe in Charles Kanjama's conservatism as something that they will bet on for the future? And going into 2027, it's going to be really important to have somebody who is the last line of defense for Kenyans when they're arrested in the middle of the night. Is there any of those candidates who seem like the exact person that the society needs at this moment? I'll ask you, Diana.
If we're asking the specific question of who will stand beside you if you're arrested in the middle of the night, especially as maybe as an advocate, even just trying to represent people who are protesting or standing against the government in some way, then the answer would obviously have to be Kabata, because that's what they were doing with Faith. I haven't, well, personally, I have not seen such a push, for example, from Kanjama himself or from PMO. But I mean, there's several other factors to consider when talking about an election, yeah. But if the question specifically is who will stand behind you when the next set of protests come, that has to be Kabata.
Is it simply because of the age, or is it like he's proven it before? What are we working with here?
History.
History. And it just goes to me. I think for me, how I decided this was not only just very personal, but also I kept on thinking for the past 2 years, who was actually shown out for people when they got arrested or when there was a public interest matter that required the intervention. I'll give flowers to PMO. He has stood out for public law. I think he was one of the advocates who fought this Huduma number. I remember reading that case and following it very keenly. I also give credit to Kanjama because he has tried in his own way to step in on matters constitutionalism. But from the onset, if I was in trouble, or I know there's somebody somewhere who's in trouble and they will need the intervention of LSK, I do know Kabata will pick up your call in
the middle of the night, because he's done it before.
He has done it before. He has proven to me. He has been there on so many late night calls. He has escorted me to so many police stations. We have fought so many things. And I think he has, just by that, I think he has convinced me that he might be the right person to lead LSK for now.
I should loop in our audience. Thank you so much for contributing. Already I'm seeing a comment here from Collective Media. He says, love the show. The topic on LSK is very insightful. Asante for watching, Collective. And we had 2 comments from Twitter before we started this conversation. First, Harambe Jesse Kenya says, legal aid for the next 20 months because Lord knows Raya will need it. We are at a fork on the road. Full dictatorship or full freedom. That's a striking thing to say. And then I'll let you all react to this. Nesta says, Wakili, let's check on someone's focus on rule of law and its respective reforms as opposed to divisive social issues. We want an LSK president and Law Society of Kenya that is clear with its priorities. I think what he means is the conversation about Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama and his opinions on social issues. He says that we should focus on someone's dedication to the rule of law and the respective reforms that they are suggesting, and should avoid social issues. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's well said, and I do believe everybody is entitled to their own opinion. But at the same time, it's something that happened. We cannot just easily forget about it. And in my opinion, I believe I'm making this choice out from what I've seen and from my experience just being on the ground and what is actually required. Because I can tell you this, I really don't see the other 2 candidates doing the dirty work like what Kabata has been doing. I don't see it. I see them as these people who would bark and they would make the government shiver. But at the same time, what about those people at the down there? What about the common wananchi? That's my problem.
That's your problem. All right. I wonder where that is coming from. I still don't see it. Maybe it's because Kabata has actually done it and not an age thing, but I feel like there's a bit of that. And I'd understand why young advocates would be swayed towards Kabata. Someone here says, do they believe in young law practitioners? Do they believe the young law practitioners have a place in LSK, especially now that the Gen Zs are taking over the workspace? And do they believe a youthful LSK chair will be championed for their space? That's to you guys. Do you believe that? I think, Nelly.
I think in their campaign, they've been forced to kind of appeal to the young bar. So you'll find they were, with some of the videos that, for example, Senior Counsel has been putting out, even the language he's choosing to use, you'll find he's trying to appeal to the young bar because I think they're more now, so they might actually be the deciding factor for this election. Also with PMO, we've seen him try to take them. I think we did a few lunches and things to try and call on the young bar, but some of their comments towards the young bar might actually come back to bite them, especially I think Wanyama, who made some comments to the young bar a while back. And I think the best bet now would be Kabata. He's the one who's looking like the sweetheart for the young bar. Yeah.
Okay. You have something to say, Diana?
Well, I mean, what they're saying is accurate, but I do feel that there's a sense of we are following in by taking on Kabata, by saying that we are expecting a continuation of what the LSK has been doing so far, because we feel that, Faith has done XYZ. However, okay, for example, Faith, they did go forward with a campaign promise that was very important, which was decreasing practicing fees for young lawyers. That's something that was a big deal. I mean, practicing fees are a bit expensive if you've just started out or anything of that nature. So that's something that they did that was important. But personally, for example, there's something I noticed that I did not feel they did enough of, which was one of their key campaign promises was we're going to diversify the areas of practice so that we have more ways to get funds, more ways to practice, more accessibility for lawyers, more opportunities for young lawyers.
Yeah.
And I did notice that that's a promise that just sort of fell by the wayside. And I do wish somebody would do something about that. But it's maybe it's one of those things that was just not the practicalities of doing it.
Yeah.
Were not.
I'm curious to know the practicalities. How would you even do that?
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah.
How would you do that? Because that was one of the promises that was made.
Yeah.
How would one do that? Yeah.
And it's a promise that all of them are making, that the young advocates will then have more in terms of salary.
Exactly.
How do you even do
promise.
that?
Yeah.
Ian, is there any way someone can do this? Just one of those wishful thinking type of campaign promises?
Well, it's so hard when politicians go out there and just make promises. When it comes to implementation, it's a very different thing. But something just to revert on your earlier question was that about the LSK being young and who is likely going to be the president. In my opinion, even if it's going to be PMO or Charles Kanjama, I'm paying a lot of attention on who is going to be getting into the general representative roles. Mm-hmm. The representative from these other regions, the other chapters, I think I'll be paying more attention to that, because if you look at the people who are vying in these other areas, they're relatively very young. Mm-hmm. They're not this elite practitioners that you will see. So in my opinion, even if Kabata, my preferred candidate, doesn't get in, I know I'm going to make a lot of, I'll be very, very keen to see the people who get into those particular roles, because I believe that's where a lot of changes are going to come from. Because even if you have a progressive leader who's appealing to the young bar, and then you have general members who are not progressive, what type of change are you going to have?
How much influence do those chapter leaders have?
A lot. Take, for example, according to all other regions, the upcountry actually have more votes compared to the in-out core leadership per se. So I think the whole membership is 13 members. Out of that, I think 8 seats upcountry, and the rest are 4 from Nairobi, then 3 being the president, the vice president, and 1 general member from Nairobi. That's it. They have the numbers. Yeah. So I'm paying a lot of attention to that as a whole.
And to another issue that was highlighted by African Uncensored in 2025, there was a story that was done by one of our own called Tracy Bonareri. She did a story called Blocked at the Bar. And this story specifically exposed the reason, or part of the reason behind this 21% rate of passing the bar exam in Kenya.
Yeah.
And some of the advocates claim that they deliberately failed so that they can then give bribes to some of the people at Kenya School of Law. I remember vividly that at that time, one of the things that was pointed out by those people that were denied their results at that time, or they were failed, was because they said that Faith Odhiambo and the entire LSK leadership had failed in advocating for their rights to fair invigilation and examination at that time. And it's not something that I'm hearing any of these candidates speaking about. When if you're supposed to appeal to young advocates, you should be looking at such issues. Is this something that has come across any of you guys' timeline?
It's I think that conversation is a bit tricky because, well, okay, for example, personally, I have not come across such incidences of corruption, but of course, I assume there are, just because that is the nature of practice. However, my concern would be this: we know that there's a consistent passing rate that is the same every year. Yeah, even just statistically speaking, that seems unlikely. So there has to be some level of something going on, but unfortunately, I cannot point to something that says this is the hard evidence showing this manipulation. I can only say that if the rate is the same across the years, where the smoke, there's fire. There's something happening there. But the hard evidence is not something that has been presented yet. Yeah. Perhaps, as you've said, it's something that the LSK could look into and see what's going on with the Council of Legal Education, what's going on with these papers, why is this in the way that it is.
Why is this trend over the years?
Yeah.
I'm seeing the advocate in you, because everything you need evidence for, and you need like concrete evidence, so you're not making a case for it. Nelly, you had a reaction to it.
Yes, I think with the issue of pupils and students, especially CLE, the Council of Legal Education, the problem has been that the members of the LSK are actually people who have passed the bar. So by the time you're becoming a member of the Law Society of Kenya, you've already passed. They don't really look after the welfare of advocates before they become advocates. And that is a question that now you find in their manifestos. They're trying to kind of bring it into the fore. Yeah. But really, legally, LSK does not have that much of a mandate towards the pupils and the people who are studying law. So that's why you find there's not much being said about that issue.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I'd love for us to go back to the realistic nature or lack thereof of some of these promises that are being made by all these candidates. All of them, for instance, say that they're going to increase the amount of salary or allowances that go to young advocates. None of them is speaking about the sexual harassment cases. And one of them is a clear, well-proven advocate who'll show up for people in the middle of the night when they're arrested, because he was deputy to a very proactive leader and they both took charge at that time. Then there's another candidate who's saying the exact same thing that another candidate is saying. Is it a thing where all of you advocates are stuck in a place where you really don't have a good option? You kind of have to go with the best person who seems like, well, they've done what they've done, or they stand for something I stand for. Is it a case where advocates are forced into a corner where they have to choose between people who appear to have minimal vision or a lack of a very clear vision and just empty promises? Ian?
Well, like I said earlier, for me, it was just clear cut. I just wanted to make sure that my decision will need to be backed up by what I've seen. And each one of them has successes and, an aura which is well earned, that they're well experienced, they've done something in their own career. But for me to make my own decision as Ian Mutiso, when I cast my ballot, was to see if somebody was to come and have a problem with the state and they need the help for LSK, who's the likely person going to show up? That was just it for me.
That was it for you, because you care about the overreaches of government.
Yeah,
right?
because also sometimes I would get in trouble, mainly because of how I butter police and stuff like that. And sometimes the LSK will need to come and help me out of a situation. Yeah. So for me, I find it just who's like making that call. Will it be easier when I do it with PMO? Will it be easier when I'm doing it with Kanjama? Or will it be easier with Kabata? That was just it for me. Yeah.
Wow.
All of them are very qualified in their own rights.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for each one of them. And I've even reached out to the senior badges to learn more about Kanjama.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just my own deciding factor.
Another question here. Which gaps in LSK would they wish the next president should feel that Faith did not manage? Diana, do you want to take that?
Yes, the gap that I had addressed earlier, that issue of diversifying practice, I do think that that's for young advocates, there needs to be more. I don't know if you have experienced the same thing I've experienced, which is there are a lot of when there are, let's say, very heavy briefs being decided, the people in the room having that decision made are usually the older advocates, the ones who've been in practice for a long time and so forth. Yeah, there's no opportunity for you to come in and say, I'm actually also qualified for this. I can do this. I can do that. Yeah, and there's a sense that certain things belong to certain people. So
what do you mean by that? Certain things belong to certain people.
Well, don't want to get political, but essentially, if there's a matter that's related to something essential to government services, something that's important to the country and so forth, you'll see the same names. You always see the same names. It's not maybe necessarily not one person, but it's the same group, for example, right? So there has to be something that we can do as a society to allow people who are not necessarily part of that group to become part of the conversation. Yeah, and that's something that for me would be an issue. An issue, yes.
All right, interesting. Anything that both of you would?
I think I'll just add to what Diana said is that I'll pay attention more to the public interest matters. I'll be very curious to see how those decisions are actually made. I never got an opportunity to be allocated such a matter whereby I have to file a constitutional petition on behalf of ABCD and appointed by LSK. My matters are solely on criminal. Me ni mtu wa wananchi, I like the dirty work. But more so I'll want to see, because I want to see so many young lawyers getting those briefs. I have no interest in them, but I'll really want to know that with incoming leadership, they really give that priority, because if young lawyers are not able to make good money by just addressing all these other legal issues, at least the LSK will be able to say, okay, fine, so and such will give such type of cases to young lawyers and this and that. So I'll be very keen to see that change, because I really felt like that was one thing that maybe perhaps Faith's tenure did not really address. But anyway, what do I know?
You know a lot, Ian. You know a lot. That's why you're here. Slow down, Ian. You know a lot. Nelly?
Yes, I think for me would be the terms of employment for young advocates. I think that's a big issue that no one seems to really want to come out and address, especially from pupillage, like we were speaking before, and I said LSK shies away from really discussing matters about pupils. I feel like we need a candidate who is not going to shy away from telling farms, and especially this mid farms, that if you want to have a pupil in your office, then you have to give them a remuneration of a certain amount, and if you want to have a young advocate, then they must have a remuneration of a certain amount, because that has become, I think, one of the biggest challenges for the young bar. You find some places don't give any stipend at all. They say you're here to learn, with other places giving as much as, I think, up to 50,000. So you find these are people who were in the same class, but they're unable to progress in a similar manner, and they're advocates. So the similar way, the way in medicine, they look after their interns. I feel like even for us, we need to have someone who's looking after the young bar.
Yeah, and this is something I had one of those candidates speaking about. Yeah, you can speak, Diana. You need to add something?
Well, just I do think that this is a free market issue. Just not because I don't think that people should definitely earn what
like
they
minimum,
like a bare minimum. Sure, I just think that we need to be aware that when we create certain, if that minimum is above the existing minimum wage regulations, for example, we would be decreasing the opportunities available, because then the people who have to go for pupillage, if they have to go for pupillage and yet the people around them can't afford that bare minimum, what's the solution here?
I think,
just as an example.
Yeah, I think as a profession, we can afford
can
to
afford
pay
it, yeah.
pupils a
Law is a
minimum wage.
pity.
Yeah.
Guys,
I think we can be able to.
Tom, I'll give you a very good example. The Law Society of Kenya has approached the Solicitors Regulation Authority. This is the UK. And also, there's also engagements with various bars like the California Bar and things like that. Because I can do a few things in those two jurisdictions. Well, when you look at solicitors who are practicing in the UK, I can tell you the minimum for a solicitor there is beyond what actually advocates can get here. And I think we should try and rather match, or rather at least plan ourselves to be like those particular authorities, because one way or another, we cannot call ourselves progressive yet to pay our people peanuts.
You see?
Yeah.
That's a good point. And Diana, all these opinions can exist in the same time. I think it depends which candidate you all vote for, which will represent those opinions.
Yeah.
But if I do say so myself, I'm the kind of guy who believes in unionizing to an extent. If the doctors can do that, then why not? And I believe us as journalists, speaking from a journalist's point of view, there is a lot of unionizing that needs to happen within our circles as well, just like any other profession, because it's important just for the well-being of every single person, regardless of their age in the profession. So there's a space for all these opinions, and we appreciate the debate. I'm afraid we have to bring it to an end, unless there's anything that we left out, Diana.
So soon.
I know, but there's so much to get into and so little time to do it. So maybe after the elections, we can then come back here and do a post-mortem.
Yes.
Like 6 months of Kabata or 6 months of Charles Kanjama, and see how that looks like.
Yeah.
And before I let you guys wrap up with your final opinions, if you have any, I'll get into our segments. For today's public participation segment, I've kept telling you over the past few weeks that the MPs have gone on retreat to Naivasha. They were supposed to come back on the 11th. That was 5 days ago. They're now back and they're debating matters in Parliament. But for public participation this week, we're not going to tell you where a public participation event is going to happen, but we're going to bring something to your attention that you should know about. There are 2 documents that are now made public. First of all, the medium-term debt management strategy and the 2026 budget policy statement. These are both documents that came from the committee. Were uploaded by the parliamentary committee after it was taken to them by Treasury. Now, here's a brief explanation of one of those documents, the budget policy statement. The budget policy statement states out the broad strategic policies and policy goals that will guide the national government and county governments over the coming financial year. Why should you care about these documents? These documents are important because this is a crucial stage of budgeting in the country. By April 30th, you'll see the Treasury Cabinet Secretary walking out with that iconic briefcase, and that briefcase will be the culmination of this process that I'm letting you know about right now. The budget policy statement is usually taken by Treasury to the National Assembly after it has been approved by Cabinet. This document will then have to be scrutinized by the committee at the Parliament. That committee will then either, 1, make changes to that document and amend them to represent your views, or they could pass it as it is. And then it will go back to Treasury and Cabinet and come back for the National Assembly to pass it by April 30th. But this document, as it stands right now, was taken to the committee on the 13th, I believe. It's marked at that document, but it will be done by the 28th. That's something that you don't have control over. All the noise that you've been making over the past year to your representative, your member of parliament, should be what they say in this committee stage to represent your opinion. But just to explain the policies that the Kenya Kwanza administration wants. So first of all, they're putting at the forefront agricultural transformation. You know about the fertilizer subsidy, all that. Then the medium and small enterprises in the country, transformation of that sector. Then there's healthcare, UHC. You've heard about a lot of infrastructure in terms of hospitals and county governments getting a lot of equipment, but also among that list of universal health coverage under healthcare is the social health insurance fund, SHIF, or SHA, the topic that we had over the past week. And then fourth, housing. You know about the affordable housing program. It takes 3% of your income every month. And then lastly, the digital superhighway. You've heard him speak about ICT hubs across the country, thousands of them. Well, there's a budget for that. And that budget starts being formulated now with this document. So if you have time, it's a chunky document around 160 plus pages, but it's a document that you should go through, and it should inform what you should expect by April 30th, and how much executive will give itself, how much National Assembly will give itself, how much education will get, how much health will get. It's something that you should know about. So the budget policy statement 2026 is out, and it's at the National Assembly for their debate. Next week, we'll bring you the debt management strategy of 2026. A lot of interesting things there regarding where the government will get its money, given that we're working with a budget deficit. Now, gentlemen and ladies, we have to wrap this up. So in 30 seconds, each one of you, you've said Kabata a lot of times here, and it's starting to sound like we're advocating for Kabata here. So no, I'm joking, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's your opinion and we allow that. So Diana, Ian, in that order, what do you expect from the leader in 30 seconds, whoever gets elected?
For me, the most important thing that I expect from the person who stands up, regardless of whether it's our preferred candidate or not, is that they'll be able to stand up against whatever is coming in the next national election, because we know something is coming in the next national election. So if it is somebody who can stand against whatever is coming, then I'd be happy with whoever that candidate would be. Yeah, that's the most important thing for me.
So somebody who will uphold the rule of law.
Yes.
Over the next election. Ian?
My plea will be that with the incoming president of the last party of Kenya, we just experienced another Kenyan dying yesterday through police brutality. And this role is not what it used to be 10, 15 years ago. I'm very sure right now we are not only just fighting about upholding the Constitution, but we are fighting people who do not uphold it. So my ask is that you'll stand with advocates, you'll stand with Kenyans to do the right thing. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. So police brutality and someone that will stand against such excesses.
Yeah.
Nelly?
I think for me, the candidate coming in has to be brave, because whatever is coming in the next 2 years, you can't be shy, you can't be timid. You have to be brave and stand for what you believe in. So if you believe that Kenyans deserve the rule of law, then you have to be ready from the moment that you're declared winner to stand with that rule of law. Yeah.
And stand against the government excesses. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much, Diana Cheng, for coming, Ian Mutiso for making time, and Nelly Njenga for making time. Pia asanteni sana.
Thank you, Tom.
We deeply appreciate you guys coming through, especially on such short notice. I understand, and I'm really sorry. But now we'll let Justine Wanda explain everything badly.
Kenyan rugby fans showed up to be sunburnt and to celebrate the HSBC Sevens Division 2 tournament over the weekend. Teams from various countries competed, some taking giant L's while others showcased their tackle and scrum prowess. Kenya's Shujaa emerged third in the whole tournament, while the Lionesses managed to only row a little at 5th place. And on to 7-year terms a charm. In Zimbabwe, their cabinet has approved a draft legislation that would extend their current president's term to 2030. Zimbabweans, I know this isn't coming as a surprise because your president's name is Emerson Mnangagwa. His name literally starts with Imas. He was already in too deep from the dictatorial nomenclature. This was unfortunately bound to happen. The draft also proposes that MPs would elect the president instead of a direct vote from the citizen, and that the president would serve 2 consecutive 7-term limits instead of a 5-year term limit.
Zimbabwe's cabinet has approved draft legislation that could significantly alter the country's political landscape. The proposed constitutional amendments would extend presidential terms from 5 to 7 years and allow the president to be elected by parliament rather than through a direct popular vote, potentially keeping President Emerson Mnangagwa in office until 2030.
Victoria would have fallen to her knees because MPs, who are the easiest group to sway in any country, deciding the future of the country, gives them too much power. And as Kanye said, their president is already 83 years old, but old isn't gold, and neither does it fold in the seat of power. 3 months ago, his appeal to stay in power had been rejected, like post-Valentine's flower purchases. Apparently, when it comes to power, you just have to adjust the weight from one cheek to another and keep holding on to see who will really stop you. The Justice Minister reassured citizens, saying that public consultations will be held before the bill heads to Parliament for debate. The 3 arms of government are playing pickleball, and you, my Zim friends, are both the ball and the ground. As a Kenyan, I would have loved to send you words of encouragement, but there's a high likelihood that all those words would have been abducted along any East African border. Constitutional experts are like, this isn't impossible. We need a referendum first for them to change term limits. 13 years ago, Zimbabwe held a referendum and got a new constitution, but now it's being used as a suggestion box of what applies. Every African country drinks from the cup of dictatorship every few decades, except Uganda. Those guys have made their peace with it. 40 years is at least one 30-year-old and a Gen Alpha to know their true center. Former President Mugabe ruled from 1980 to 2017, but I guess Zimbabwean MPs want some kind of relay with the guy that took over. Mnangagwa, which in Kiswahili would loosely translate to "you guys are cooked," has his term set to expire in 2028, but he's also known as a crocodile, and his jaws are ready for another bite. Speaking of bites, the Kenyan Treasury CS confirmed that Kenyan government will proceed with its plan to toll Thika Road Superhighway and all other major roads. When this was initially announced, there was a large public outcry, but GOK is letting Kenyans know that when it comes to tears, you must learn how to rehydrate. They want to introduce toll stations so Kenyans have to pay to use highways because where there's a way, there's a wage. The Treasury CS said that tolls collected will be used to fund road upgrades and service infrastructure debt. At this point, the government will likely introduce something called Nomad Exclusive, a pass that means moving from point A to point CBD is a premium service. There are so many pocket fishing road use levies, including the road maintenance levy paid 18 to 25 shillings per litre, to the road annuity levy, to the upcoming securities levy, to transit tolls for huge vehicles, to now proposed road user tolls. No wonder Kenyans are joining all sorts of running and walking clubs. The great internal migration to and from work or any other area to another is coming, and every leg owner is locking in preparation. Get that heart rate up, people. We will definitely need it. The roads being tolled are Thika Superhighway, Nairobi Southern Bypass, Nairobi Nakuru Mau Summit Road, Kenol Sagana Marwa Road, Mombasa Southern Bypass, and Dogokundu Bypass. The policy also targets high-traffic roads with a potential expansion to the Athi River Namanga Highway. We're also on the highway to becoming corruption mavericks, as Kenya is now ranked 130 out of 182 in the latest Global Corruption Index. Call that bottom up. The last will be the first in corruption. In a report released by Transparency International, Kenyans scored 30 out of 100 from 32 in the previous year. Kenya is really an international A student in reverse by excelling in corruption, and there are no signs of progress. Apparently, Rwanda and Tanzania surpassed Kenya by failing to be good at this. So if you really think about it, this country will never stop leading. This bottom-up approach comes in handy at every instance. Rwanda is the least corrupt East African country and it continues to show signs of progress, while Uganda and DRC are really thriving in the corruption scene. Somalia and South Sudan are the main characters of the region, and they were found to be in critical state. Integrity and accountability are the stones that the builders of East Africa rejected as worthless, but at least we're in this regional failure together.